An Empire of Ice and Fire by Longclaw 1-6, Chapter 42, The Lion's Den. Running his eyes along the Empress's left arm, Sam was mildly surprised that the normally headstrong Daenerys Targaryen didn't cajole and complain the whole time about what a waste it all was. She merely sat at the edge of her bed with a faraway look on her face. Her hand trembled, and it would have been far worse if it weren't for Sam holding it. "Are you sure you didn't spill any of it on your skin?" Primarily an irritant, rather destroyer of the bowels. A mere drop of nightshade on the flesh could end up causing intense pain at the very least. "No," she said in an almost whisper. "It spilled on the floor." Dany's face was a ghostly pale, the weight of what had happened holding her over like a shroud. Around them, Marjorie, Gilly holding the simple bag of equipment any maester or wannabe maester carried for Sam, and Miss Sunday were equally worried and fearful. Arya, ever the tomboy of the group of women, lounged on a plush chair, sharpening needle. Right at the foot of the bed rested Ghost, while on the bed perched Sansenya, both protecting their mother. The other two hatchlings rested at the foot of each of the twin beds, while their older brothers flew above the castle. "Is he Sir Brynden?" A loud bang caused the group to flinch. One hand gripping Ice's hilt, Robb withdrew the other fist from where it had slammed into a table. "Yes! Motherfucking morons!" Anger poured over him in waves. Grey Worm, perched quietly near the door, merely simmered in equal but less conspicuous intensity. "Mother and Uncle Edmure were with him when he slipped away. Fucking Lannisters!" "Are you sure it was them?" asked Marjorie. Her eyes flickered to the nursery where the twins slept, unaware of the death-clouding Riverrun. She worried for her family, and once Robb and she were married, they would be her family as well. There are no share of persons that wish to harm the Starks and the Targaryens. "None would be this brazen. Pulling an assassination at a wedding? That's Tywin fucking Lannister's speciality." Seeing that he was ready to murder someone, understandably given the death of Talisa Stark under circumstances partly similar, Marjorie stood and gently enveloped him in an embrace. Gradually, the anger began to leach out of him. Suddenly the door threw open, knob slamming into the stone wall. "Dany!" Eyes wide and pulsing with fear, blood as cold as ice, Jon ignored them all as he searched out for his wife. Zeroing in on her, Sam luckily scrambled out of the way before the panicked Emperor could shove him to the side as an obstacle between him and his beloved. "Dany!" He scooped her up into his arms, squeezing tightly as if she would disappear if he ever let go. The bone-crushing embrace ripped Dany from her fearful haze. Breathing in Jon's distinct scent and hearing his gravelly, rasping tone, she both melted and broke composure. "Oh, Jon!" Dany buried her face into his neck, fighting sobs as she reassured himself that he was here and that she was safe. Their father returning, Ghost whined and nudged him while Sansenya chirped. Not letting go, Jon turned to Sam. "Please, is she all right, Sam?" "Perfectly, Your Majesty." Smiling slightly, Sam was glad he could unquestioningly tell his friend and ruler of such good news. He continued, just as Sansa arrived in the chambers. "Thanks to Lady Arya knocking over the cup, none of the poison touched her lips." "Arya?" Sansa looked at her with confusion. "You knew it was poison?" The wild wolf shrugged. "I saw Uncle Brynden acting strangely. Sickly." Omitting the fact about the waif's behaviour out of instinct, she continued. "Could have been indigestion, but I wasn't going to take that chance with our Daenerys. She's part of the pack." Her face failed. "I pursued the girl, but she got away. Professional assassin." Robb snarled again. "Tywin Lannister. Knew it!" "Could be masters. Sons of Harpy." Pointed eyes fell on Grey Worm. "I've seen it happen." Glancing over Dany's shoulder, Jon looked at his younger sister with new eyes. "Thank you," he mouthed. Normally one to shrug off praise, Arya couldn't help but be perked up by it. Not letting go of his wife, her face now buried in his chest, Jon looked over at Barristan and Jorah. "I don't care who it was right now. Double the guards on all Imperial quarters. Every door, window, and fucking latrine hole needs to be patrolled." "I have already seen to it, Your Majesty." Jorah replied. Grey Worm, the Unsullied are in charge of manning the battlements. Let no one in unless you have searched them down to bare skin. Lips pursed in a determined line, the Unsullied commander nodded. Jon looked to his left. Sam, are you sure she will be all right? At the portly semi-maester's nod, Jon gestured to the others. Leave us. Now. Barking authoritatively, the others slowly proceeded out of the door. Eyes worn and chest threatening to burst as she looked up upon the scene of her beloved brother embracing her new sister tightly. The truth of the attacker was at the tip of her tongue. But it died there. Something inside her told Arya to keep it close to her chest. Hanging her head, she turned and left to her quarters. Sir Barristan closed the door behind him, after one saddened look back at his two wards. It was just Jon and Dany. Oh, Dany. Kissing Jon's chest through the formal tunic, Dany reached down to tangle her fingers through his. Jon, don't. I'm fine. Leaning up to look into his panicked eyes, she kissed him sweetly, washing away his fear and her shell shock. Lips tingling from his amazing touch, the Targaryen Empress gently removed his coronation cloak and rested it on the table. Come, sit by me. Lowering herself to sit at the edge of the bed, Dany patted the space to her left. She rested her hand on his shoulder as he sat down. What did Tywin Lannister say in his message? Jon sighed. He's sending his daughter Cersei as part of a delegation to parley with us, to seek an accord to bring harmony to Westeros. His tone left no doubt how he judged the Grey Lion's sincerity. Harmony, my ass! Dany spat. He's only sending his daughter because he's too much of a coward to face us himself. That's what Tyrion said. He kissed her head, nuzzling the silver locks. The spider told us that his birds found a troop movement building up strength in the south. That confirms what Brienne told me. Daenerys looked up at him, puzzled. Brienne? I sent her and Gendry on a ranging mission to overwatch King's Landing. The reports have been disturbing. Joffrey, he's worse than Ramsay or Viserys. I'm not saying that lightly. Fists clenching, Daenerys felt dragonfire coursing through her. They're all the same, crushing others under their wheel, for their own hunger for power. She would destroy them all, and together with Jon, rebuild a better world from the broken ruins of the old. Not wanting to hurt Dany with what he would say next, Jon knew that he had to. I agree. Which is why I have to go myself. Dany's head whipped at him, mouth open. You have to trust me on this, my dragon. There's something going on. Something sinister. Brienne implies that there's someone on the inside of King's Landing, and I have to investigate. Smiling softly, he kissed her head. I'll take Rhaegal with me. I'll come back to you. I promise. Deflating with the exhaustion of the day, Dany leaned into him. All right. An emperor had his duty, and as an empress had hers. If it meant risk, then they had to make the gamble. Wordlessly, he rose and helped her down, draping the furs over her before heading to check on the twins. Lying there without a word, Dany felt cold. Under the furs, despite the fire, a deep northern chill invaded her bones. She hated it. Hated feeling vulnerable. To feel the same as the scared young girl abused by her brother. Now, the name Daenerys Targaryen was feared worldwide. Revered worldwide. Wonders no one ever thought possible were accomplished and erected by her. But something as unremarkable as a cup of wine nearly destroyed the great Dragon Queen. Mind clouded with her thoughts of death and destruction, Dany did not notice Jon returning from the twins' room, until his hand rested on her shoulder. Sleep, my queen. Rest. He attempted to leave, but was stopped by her hand gripping his wrist. Please. Hating the vulnerability that coursed through her, wishing to be the all-powerful Dragon Queen that both rained dragonfire upon her enemies and confidently seduced her husband. Dany still needed him. Please, hold me, Jon. across the entire collection of people that advised her and protected her and served her. Only her emperor and love held the honor of expressing her innermost fears and pain. She needed him, and shockingly, didn't feel any less for it. Smiling, John climbed into bed beside her, worry and apprehension pitting in his stomach. He closed his eyes and allowed Dany's soft skin to calm him. Tomorrow would be grueling. But tonight, at least, he had her by his side.
This new alliance with Karth could pay huge dividends, my lord.
Shifting his eyes from the line of vehicles assembled, Qyburn licked his lips.
Fire when ready,
he ordered calmly. When the high-pitched shrieks echoed along the still landscape, Tywin Lannister didn't flinch. He kept his spyglass trained on the distant ridge.
They certainly sound terrifying.
An enemy army would be filled with terror at the noise. Each of the 10 horse-drawn carts contained 10 rail launchers, horses neighing and whining from their hitching posts, several yards behind in fear as the jets of flame shot into the sky. Arcing across the concrete grey clouds, the rockets launched towards the enemy positions. 100 warheads detonated one after the other, a raging inferno consuming the ridge specifically chosen as the test site 300 yards away. Tywin felt a blast of heat waft over his skin. Nothing could survive this. The blasts began to slack off. "Reload!" screamed the battery commander. The dozens of hastily impressed trebuchet operators and Carthian engineers scrambled to place the second load of rockets into the launch rails.
The Dragon Queen has her dragons,
but this will rule the battlefields and defeat the flying beasts.
Hopefully,
Tywin grumbled, bringing the spyglass to his eye.
For your sake.
The words were drowned out by the roars of the second volley. Some time later, the inferno had died down. Launch carts were silent, horse tenders hitching the animals to vehicles to begin the trek back to King's Landing, tarps covering the specialty weapons. Picking through the blackened soil, flickering flames still clinging to clumps of grass and bramble, Tywin shifted his gaze to the test subjects. In various wooden cages were old and crippled slaves that had been chained. Their charred bodies lay lifeless in various poses of panic and pain. Some wore metal armor, some wore leather tunics. Some were bare except for bannerman tunics. All but a few were dead. Qyburn covered his mouth and nose with a cloth, blocking out the stench of overcooked human flesh. "They are potent anti-personnel weapons," he remarked. Screams and gurgled moans resonated in the background. Lannister guards running swords through the survivors.
"Yes, they are."
Tywin peered into the distance.
"But would they hurt dragons?"
"There are metal caps King Oryxon provided us. Coupled with the scorpions, I have no doubt that we will have the most potent defences against her beasts."
"Good."
As he was about to head to his horse, the Master of Whisperers caught him by the wrist. "My lord, the little birds tell a peculiar rumour about our enemies. About 2 bastards in particular." Tywin raised an eyebrow.
"Rumours? About the bastard Snow?"
The queer glint in Qyburn's eyes intrigued him.
"Go on."
Gusts of cold air slamming into him in a constant stream, Jon effortlessly gripped the spines on Rhaegar's back as the green dragon beat his wings. Heavy cloud cover masked their approach to the outskirts of the capital, the towering mass of the great pyramid of the Chimera, shrouded by the wispy grey towers. A thud shook Rhaegar's body as he landed on a small clearing, shrouded by trees. Perfect to hide something big from notice. Jon slid expertly, quickly walking to where his dragon rested his snout. "Shh." The Emperor gently stroked Rhaegar's snout.
"Relax, boy.
You have to stay quiet." Turning out muttered curses and prayers, he couldn't help but chuckle at Davos. The Imperial hand plopped onto the ground, legs shaking and face as pale as a ghost.
"And here I thought you had steady legs." "Steady sea legs, yes. Dragon back legs."
Davos trailed off, falling onto his ass on the ground.
"Give me a minute."
Laughing merrily, John turned back to Rhaegal. The dragon stared at him with deep eyes, slit-like pupils sparkling with mirth.
Yes, I know, boy.
He smiled, dragon showing his affection by nuzzling John's chest with his massive snout.
Stay here and rest. I'll head back to your mother soon, all right?
Yawning, the dragon curled his neck and plopped down onto the ground. John smiled as he drifted off to sleep.
Gods know I want to be doing that with Danny in my arms.
2 quick flashes of light caught his attention.
Brienne?
As per the pre-arranged signal, the tall knight emerged from the brambles, blacksmith's apprentice by her side. To her, he was far less entertaining, but a better fighter than Podrick, though she hoped the lad was coming of age out in Essos.
Your Majesty.
She knelt.
Get up. John rolled his eyes. I'm just John here. Where is your camp?
Deeper in the woods, hidden from cover so that anyone atop the pyramid can't spot us. Our observation position is just on the edge of the tree line.
Any further contact with our men on the inside?
It had been a cipher, but Brienne's dispatches back to Riverrun had clearly indicated they had unexpected allies inside. She nodded. Aye. Hours later, the 2 of them were perched in Brienne's hiding place, a small den at the edge of the forest covered with brambles and vines. Across the vast desert of animal and human bones stretched the entire city capital, the beating heart of Joffrey's horrid domain.
Damn, how many people has that moron chained up?
Throngs of people, more than he could count in a lifetime, trudged up the ramp, with massive stones attached to ropes they pulled. Further thousands swarmed the man-made Acropolis like ants, cutting and carving, while guards were everywhere. The whole city was as an armed camp, both at the walls and among the innards. Attacking would not be easy. Our people on inside say it has to be around 50 or 60,000 and growing. Dornish, Giscari, Valantians, and Andal bondservants.
On top of the actual residents of the city.
It just seems so nonsensical.
What does Joffrey wish to accomplish?
Davos shrugged.
He's a vicious idiot, as Tyrion said.
Can't rationally digest a mad mind. Nodding at the logic behind the statement, John centered the spyglass back on the Red Keep. Contrasting from the bustling city, the iconic centre of the 7 Kingdoms seemed almost deserted by comparison. The only merchant he could spot were the gold cloaks, spears in hand and manning various scorpion emplacements in the towers, similar to the city gates.
Davos, you are from Flea Bottom, correct? Aye, Your Majesty.
His hand, spyglass pointed towards said part of the city, said, Best point of entrance would be there. If Brienne is correct about the slave pens, we can reach it without crossing any main avenues.
It would have to be at night, of course.
He looked at his hand. Any chance we could avoid the walls? Davos grinned at him.
Sire, you don't grow up in this shithole without knowing every way out of it.
The Emperor could not argue with that. Lights snuffed out and blinds shut in windows overlooking one of the side avenues in the darkened and quiet city, are only quieted down at night, but outside of peaceful times such as rare tranquility in Westeros's only true metropolis was shattered constantly. Be it the moans of starving small folk, the cacophony of food riots, the roaring artillery and clashing of steel as Renly threw his men at the gates, and the clatter of Crake Hall land snakes as they marched up the cobblestone avenues from the port to the military camp north of the city.
Magnificent, aren't they?
Cavan Lannister said from his mount.
The men that made dawn howl.
Staring at the maze of stars in the night sky, Jaime tensed at a flutter of motion to his right. The sudden palpitations in his chest slowed.
Just a curtain being drawn.
Morose filled him. Boyhood dreams of being a dashing knight, beloved and renowned by all, evaporated into a reality of infamy and loathing. The city's fear of their rulers was the only emotion that outpaced the hate. So were our men at Riverrun, and Daenerys Targaryen's dragons and Unsullied cut them to pieces. A shiver cut through him. The feel of the heat on his back from the green blast. It had been nearly an hour before Bronn felt it safe to haul him to the shore, far away from the battlefield. And now we'll have to face the Dothraki as well. Uncle Kevin waved him off.
Tigert may have been a good knight,
but a tactician he was not. We know what the enemy is made of now, and the dragon bitch will not have the same advantages. Mark my words. As if punctuated the sentence, the man's halberds all glinted in the moonlight. Kevin was right. It was magnificent to look at. On the tactical side, Jaime eyed his cousin warily. Not as one-mindedly ambitious as Tywin, or as arrogant as Tigert. Kevin was the epitome of a cultured noble. Cousin Lancel's religious conversion killed much of the Lannisters' fire within him, but he retained a top-notch military mind. If not to the same caliber as Jon Snow or Jaime's father. If he's not worried, then they must have something up their sleeve. Father always was scheming, and now she's... Jaime calmed himself. Cersei may be hated in the Stark camp, but Jon Snow was rumoured to be as honourable as his father. They wouldn't disturb a flag of truce. A flash of something to his left this time caught Jaime's eye. Seeing nothing, a foreboding and familiarity drew the former Kingsguard to urge his horse to a trot to the piss-stained alleyway. He narrowed his eyes, peering into the darkness.
"What are you doing, nephew? Spot something?"
Hearing nothing over the steady march of lanzknechts, Jaime ignored his feeling.
"Nothing. Probably rats."
A chuckle left the older man's lips.
"What did you expect in a narrow alley? Doubt there are Targaryen dragons in there."
Rolling his eyes at his uncle's teasing, Jaime cast another look into the darkness before riding back to the column. Hands clasped over Gendry's mouth, his brother-in-law-to-be's eyes shut tight. Jon released a breath he didn't realize he had been holding as the sound of marching feet grew fainter and fainter in the distance.
"I thought they'd never leave,"
he exhaled in a harsh whisper.
"I'm sorry, Your Majesty."
He was silenced with a gesture of the hand. Jon couldn't begrudge the man who stole his sister's heart for accidentally tripping on a glass bottle. He would seek to brain him with Longclaw and let him to bleed to death if he either dishonoured Arya or gave away their position. As Davos put it, they were in the lion's den. Clutching his warhammer as Jon clutched his sword, the two of them dashed towards Davos and Brienne as they waited 200 yards down the alley. The climb through the tunnels and the dash through the flea-blossom slums, filled with shit and stale mead, brought them to their destination. Feet sliding silently over the dirt, they reached the makeshift wall that divided the slave pens from the rest of the city.
"Took you long enough,"
Davos hissed.
"We were detained,"
the Emperor told his hand. He looked at the small tunnel over the wall. It looked fresh. Wordlessly, he scrambled under it. Brienne was waiting on the other side, flanked by 2 Westerosi and hundreds of slaves. Dornish, Westerosi bondservants, imported Essosi of all colours. The collected dregs that built Joffrey's monuments rested in the giant beast cage on the sand floors and scattered cots.
"Your Majesty."
A balding man, tufts of wild hair ringing a shiny cranium, extended his hand.
"Thoros of Myr at your service, Knight of the Seven Kingdoms and Red Priest."
"He belongs to the Brotherhood without banners," Brienne offered as an explanation. "Along with Beric Dondarrion here, they have the information about Joffrey's plans." Before Jon could inquire further, a large man with a rather large burn scar sidled up to the Lady Knight.
"Sandor Clegane."
Having only seen him for one short period when Robert Baratheon visited Winterfell, the man's face was hard to forget, and he looked angry.
"You dare show up here, moron!"
Face to face with Brienne, the Hound looked like he was ready to explode in a homicidal rage any moment.
"Here to finish the job?"
"Easy there, friend," Beric interjected. "We're all comrades here."
"Shut it. The lady and I have unfinished business."
He grinned toothily. Brienne narrowed her eyes. "Not particularly. But the future state of your life is up to you." A hand rested on her sword, daring the unarmoured former Kingsguard to try anything. Snarl on his lips, it morphed into a slick smile as he laughed.
"You have a set, lady."
Looking over his shoulder, Sandor's eyes widened.
"The fuck? You're still alive?"
Gendry rolled his eyes, shrugging as he glanced over at the Hound.
"I would have thought the little bitch had a fighting chance. I'd expected you to be worm-chowing a fucking ditch a long time ago.
A dark scowl crossed the normally placid Gendry. That's my betrothed you're talking about, dog. To the boy's surprise, the former Kingsguard chortled.
Now that I did fucking expect.
While the others had their own special reunion, Thoros led Jon and Davos through the throng of slaves and prisoners. Most seemed to be listless, and nurse was obviously intense fatigue. In many cases, actual wounds and cuts from the overseers. While many watched curiously over the newly crowned emperor with curiosity.
It's just around here.
The Red Priest motioned to a patch of sand undisturbed by the mingling slaves. Suddenly, a large-built man showed up, skin the colour of red-baked brick. He began barking in Giscari, gesturing angrily. Jon only stood the tone as Thoros bantered back with him. The man's growling turned from angry to fearful.
Words like chimera
and faith militant were bandied about, Jon gathering the gist. Quiet! The cluster of slaves parted to reveal a lithe woman in red rags. Her skin was a flawless tan, hair black as night. Striding determined to Jon, Thoros bowed as she clasped his cheeks. You have come, she said in the common tongue. The prince that was promised has returned to this earth. Having heard the same from Melisandre many times, the mystic tone and wild set of her eyes discomfited Jon. Suddenly his eyes widened.
You!
Kinvara smiled. Good to see you have grown as I hoped, Jon Snow. Or Jaehaerys Targaryen, rather. At his disbelief, she smiled. The Lord of Light shows many things, and in due time he will show you your path. She looked at the others. I am Kinvara, head priestess of the one true faith and the Lord of Light's humble servant. A member of the Red Clergy, same as Thoros or Melisandre.
Jon narrowed his eyes. My path is taking me to the Iron Throne. Away from Joffrey. And Thoros said he had information on him. Information that would be of service to the cause of removing him.
Growing impatient, he cared not for the mystics and their shadowy secrets.
Show me, or I shall leave. I do not have time for games.
Nodding, Kinvara, clearly in charge as the Esossi, and even most of the Dornish deferred to her, motioned for Jon to follow her. They sat in a corner, joined by two hefty men in red tunics, guarding a trembling and clearly frightened girl between them. The Chimera likes only certain types of servants. None but a small few can look on his bare form. I think, being in truth, he is insecure. He began seeking out young girls several years ago for his personal maidservants, and had his Grand Maester blind them with special poisons, so they wouldn't be capable of plotting against him. Taking a look, Jon saw she truly was, indeed, without working eyes. He felt horrified. It was worse than Ramsay. Ask your questions. I will translate for you. Shifting from Kinvara to the girl and then back to Kinvara, Jon began.
What goes on in the Red Keep?
Even Varys' little birds had very little information about the inner sanctums of the Lannister kingdom. Blinking two clouded, unseeing eyes, the crippled body servant began speaking in fluent, high-pitched bastard Valyrian, faster than Jon could follow with his limited knowledge of the language of his ancestors. Kinvara, though, translated without hesitation about Joffrey. His former handmaid confirmed a picture of a mad tyrant that styled himself a god, shot to a plane far more grotesque and psychopathic than even Sansa described from when she had been kept in the capital. Of one, his delusions were being reinforced by many, and only just barely controlled by Tywin. But as much as they clash, they have the same goal. Kinvara finished. Goal. Jon had a sinking feeling in the pit of his stomach. His Most Holy Majesty speaks a lot of the land to the south, across the sea where the dragons once roamed. Essos. Kinvara stumbled in her words a bit. Formerly a slave, memories of her past life flashed through her mind before she composed herself. He sees it as a tragedy that the kings of the past ended human bondage. It is his deepest desire to extend it to all the lower beings of the Seven Kingdoms. A scowl fixed itself on Jon's mouth.
I shouldn't be shocked.
He, Dany, and their armies were all that stood in Joffrey's way of enslaving the whole of Westeros.
How does he intend to accomplish this? The people would never consent to submit themselves.
Many already have, the handmaid replied through the priestess. Pale, gaunt, she looked like a wraith. The scars from mere months at Joffrey's side covered her body. Those that are brought to heal will be kept where they are, while he has plans for the others, such as in the north. Ice leached into Jon's veins. Suddenly he felt as if the Night King had entered the room. The north. What came next shocked Jon to the very core. Passing a small skin of water around, Gendry downed half of it in rapid gulps, only to get a smack on the back of the head from Brienne. Fuck! What was that for? Arya always hits harder, but he expected it from her. Those people have nothing. Don't take more than you need.
Actually, son, laughed Beric, we do have enough. Lannisters built this whole thing over a well. Oh, how generous of them,
mocked the Hound. He dropped his voice into a horrible falsetto.
We are sorry for the whipping, forced labour, and human sacrifices. Here's a well. Morons.
He drained the skin. Suddenly he stiffened.
Shh,
he hissed at the others, cocking his ears.
They're coming.
Fighting the urge to collapse on the ground, legs wobbling, Jon steeled himself.
Is there any weakness? Anything that could destroy anything from under him?
There was no more urgent goal in his mind right now. For if Joffrey even began his ambitious monstrosity, then the moment the Night King breached the wall, he would be unstoppable. From the moment Kinvara translated, the handmaid peered into the nothingness that was her vision. He has only talked once of what he fears. Said it to the High Sparrow the details of a vision he has had many times. A vision that predicted his fall. Furrowing his brows, Jon glanced at Kinvara, who shrugged. Visions in Joffrey's mind could be madness, or could be the gods tormenting him. Had nearly 600,000 people not have been a human shield protecting him, it would have been dragonfire to cause his fall. Kinvara addressed Jon directly. I have heard of this. It is called a great curse. The Lord of Light was known to do so to the greatest threats to life, to Dawn, but it is only a legend.
We have to go. The guards are coming for their midnight patrol,
Thoros whispered, gesturing to some of the slaves to move the handmaid back to her chamber. The men gingerly placed the poor soul back into the hidden chamber in the ground. Jon leaned close with his final question. He couldn't let it end without knowing.
What is this vision that he's afraid of?
Anything that brought Joffrey to terror could be of use in the future. Muffled whispers followed that Kinvara struggled to translate. Her lips pursed. At Jon's searching look, she sighed. I am sorry, great prince. I did not recognize what she said. Something about the Mark of the Lightbringer.
Mark of the Lightbringer?
Jon registered his confusion. It is supposedly what heralds his fall. Before the Red Priestess could continue, Brienne pulled him back.
You better have gotten what you came for, she hissed in a low whisper, because we have to go.
Hauled back to the exit, the sounds of overseers and guards approaching the main gate to the slave pen, Jon reflected on what he had heard. While it confirmed that Joffrey and Tywin were bigger monsters than he had thought, much left more questions than had answered. End of chapter. Hi guys, hope you enjoyed that. Sorry for all the stumbling, but some of those words, they look out of order until you say them aloud, which leads to a lot of confusion. Anyway, wow, that's a chapter and a half. Oh, I didn't think I could hate Joffrey any more than I already did, but wow. I guess it's like Davos said, there's no reasoning with a twisted mind. Anyway, you guys know the drill. Like, comment and subscribe, hit the bell to get notified, blah blah blah. I love you guys. Have a good day, night, or whatever time zone you're in. Bye my guys, gals and non-binary pals. I'll see you in another chapter. Bye!